And that's showing up all right for
Starting
everyone.
to render. There we go. Thank you so much for doing that. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you're able to join us this morning. This is one of the later events in Startup Week, and I thought this was really an interesting opportunity to work with JEDC towards the end of this week on bringing forward some really interesting work that's been done to look ahead at the projects and the coalitions that might be able to develop future opportunities for our economy. I'm going to take just a second and go over the agenda, and then Brian's going to jump on and go over in some more detail the Build Back Better program that's the genesis of this. But I just want to make 2 points. One is we do the Startup Week every year now. This is, I think, about the 8th year that we've done it. And it's been a remarkable opportunity to bring together the startup and innovation community from around the state. We've had through this week now, I think, about 64 events that have taken place that have featured startups that have had open houses. We've had program discussions helping people learn about different startup programs that are available, funding opportunities. We've had workshops for investors. We've had lots of inspirational talks about new projects and initiatives that people are taking. And overall, we've just been able to lift up the startup community. There's a great article in the paper on last Friday, a week ago, that highlighted that we've had 29,000 new business entities created in the last year, more than we've had in the past. And on top of that is information that has been available from the Center for Economic Development that points out that every year we create about 5,000 new jobs through startup businesses. And in fact, 89% of all of the net job creation in our state comes from startups. So it's with that lens that we thought that today would accomplish potentially 2 things. One is there's been so much hard work that was done by 13 different teams, actually 14, that 14th didn't quite submit, but these teams came together to be able to build new coalitions of private and public entities that would want to be able to define projects that could lift up that region or the state and an industry. And rather than let all those reports sit on the shelf, gathering dust, potentially waiting for some new opportunity, we thought it'd be important to bring people together, to bring awareness to all of that work, to the coalitions, and in fact, determine whether or not there's opportunities to help move some of those projects forward, regardless of whether or not they go forward with the actual funding application that was put together. These are projects that were looking at how to create a 4-year work plan that would have a 20-year impact on our state. And it's that kind of work that the group that I've come from, Alaska Version 3, is trying to create more opportunities to have that discussion about the next Alaska, the Alaska that we want to create in the future that creates this new economy. So I'm excited to be able to come together to share all these projects. And what we'll do is we're going to go through relatively quickly each of the projects that have submitted information. I think we've got 9 of them of the 13. And we'll have just a brief amount of time between each one to be able to ask any clarifying questions. I don't at this point want to get into a detailed discussion, but if there's a burning clarifying question, and we'll go through each of those 9 relatively quickly, so that we can then move into hopefully some breakout discussion groups. We've got folks potentially broken up into 3 rooms that you can choose, and you can move around if you want to go into a little deeper discussion about those projects. We've got some discussion questions, and we'll have one of the folks from JEDC helping with keeping notes on those discussions. We'll do that for 12 or 15 minutes, see how the energy goes, come out, report on any key findings. And then we'll have a second breakout where I really hope we'll have an interesting discussion going back into breakouts to look at what are the startup opportunities? How will these projects, the coalitions, the vision that was created be an inspiration or a catalyst to continuing on to do new startup and innovative work, regardless of whether or not these particular projects get the EDA funding. I want to see us look for the gems that are in here, the good work, the good projects that should move ahead regardless of what happens with the EDA. We don't need to wait for that funding potentially with some of these projects and the inspirations there. So at any rate, so 3 parts, we're going to go through all the projects pretty quickly. We're going to have a breakout in which we can do a little deeper dive into some of the projects and discussion you might want to have on those. We'll have a third breakout looking at startup barriers and opportunities in those areas, and then we'll wrap up. So that's the outline for today. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Brian and have him tell us a little bit more about the Build Back Better grant opportunity that created this opportunity, as well as a little bit about clusters. And then he'll help facilitate moving us through each of these projects and overview. What'll happen is we bring up each of the slides. If there's somebody here who's from that coalition that would like to speak to their project, we'd like you to do that. I know that there's a couple coalitions that don't have somebody on, and so we'll kind of pinch hit for those groups. But as we come up with each slide, if you're from that coalition and want to speak to the project, we'd like to have you come on. And we'll have, potentially about 5 minutes or so for each one if you'd like to take that much time. And we'll kind of roll through that. It's a little organic, a little flexible, depending upon how this goes. Okay? Any quick clarifying, just points of order or process, or Brian, anything that I missed you want to clarify before you jump in? Are we okay? Soren? Good. Okay, let's go ahead then. So Brian, if you want to pick it up from here, that would be wonderful.
Excellent. Soren, so you're running the deck, right? Okay, super. So Kai gave pretty much the introduction excellent introduction, and I'm just going to add a few elements here. And Kai talked a lot about the EDA in general, this program in general, but also the work that he's been focused on. I think many of you know that our role here at the Juneau Economic Development Council, we're focused on our part of Alaska, Juneau and Southeast, but we also collaborate across the state. But let's take the next slide. Let's talk about this EDA grant. Now, many of you know this inside out because you built proposals. So my few comments are not really directed towards you, directed to the others that joined today out of some interest. And there's the American Rescue Plan Act provided billions of dollars in assistance and $1 billion to the EDA for this Build Back Better initiative. And it's a huge resource. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to create enough of an investment so that this investment can be transformational, which, we applaud. The challenge and the scary part is that lots of good projects around in lots of regions that need assistance, they're not going to get it. So the way it's set up is that there is going to be 50 or 60 regions are going to be selected in phase one, and they'll each get $500,000 to do planning. And if for those of us that kind of worked around the EDA for a while, that's kind of what the EDA does, is give planning grants and some minor assistance to execute projects. And so that $500,000 for those 50 or 60 regions that are successful, that's going to be helpful resources. But the next phase is, and it's a very short first phase, just until March, is about 20 to 30. Half of those regions will be selected for a multi-year project and multi-year investment, which can be between $25 million and $75 million. And the way it was in the RFP, the way you're supposed to identify, compete for this is identify no less than 3, no more than 8 projects, and that require an investment of that magnitude, and that will be transformational. The whole premise of this is around cluster development, using economic clusters as a tool for economic development. So we can move to the next slide. I just want to spend just a moment on this concept. Many of you have participated in innovation summits that we put on for the last decade now in February in Juneau. And you may or may not know that you're going to a cluster event, right? There's 2 key elements to economic development from our point of view. It's clusters and entrepreneurs. You get those 2. There's a lot of other things that you can do and that are important, but those are the 2 main elements. So what's a cluster? I think we use that term fairly loosely, where its roots, it's an economic term. And in fact, an economic cluster it's a phenomena in the economy. Nolan Cloudy yesterday, he was giving a presentation from the Center for Economic Development, and he identified location quotient, right? He was just identifying where workers are concentrated, and that's one of the main That's what a cluster is concentrations of workers. So here's a more formal definition. And the key element to keep in mind is that the very top line of this definition, an economic cluster is a set of firms, the businesses. This is a private sector economic reality. That's what it centers around. And so it's a set of firms in the same or related field in a geographic area, which can be defined pretty loosely depending on where the influence is of that particular sector, linked by service or supply relationships, common customers, supporting institutions that rely on a shared labor market, that complement but also compete with one another within their regions, and that draw productive advantage from their mutual proximity. So when you think about clusters, think about we had Dearborn, Michigan, and I don't know where's the other one at Detroit, right? GM and Ford. They were fierce competitors, but because of that fierce competitiveness in this area, they dominated cars production and cars around the world for many, 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 many decades. Because if you wanted to do anything around vehicles, you knew where to go. Hollywood, same thing. There's Hollywood and there's Bollywood, right? And in India, they produce through Asia. That's the center of production for movies, because you go there and you find the talent that and the companies and the expertise. So that's the economic phenomena of clusters, which is really important to understand, because those are, in an economics point of view, those are those things in your economy that you're good at, where you already have investment. So it's really key to support that. And the tie to Startup Weekend in entrepreneurship is that clusters are the most fertile ground for new job creation and new firm creation. So if you're sitting back at home thinking, gosh, how do I figure out where to create what kind of company I want to create, and you're not sure, well, the first thing you should do is look around in your economy and find out what your economy is already good at, because that's the most likely place that you'll find success in starting a business, because there's already customers, there's know-how, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so just want to give a little bit of background on clusters before we dive into the individual examples. And thank you all for joining today. It's been an inspiration for our organization, a refresh of energy going through this process, and it's great to see that there are. We'll go to the next slide. I think the summary is on there, Soren. Yeah, it's great to see that there were 529 submissions around the nation for this project. So dangle out $75 million, you get a lot of people's attention. And 13 proposals from Alaska. We had a chance to meet with everyone that submitted about a week or so ago. I'm super happy that a whole bunch of them, most of them are interested in sharing their experiences. So with that, let's go to the next slide. I believe our first presenter will be us. Okay, I think it's gonna be us. Well, I'm gonna ask Soren on our team to make the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Soren. I'm over here at JDC, and just wanted to kind of put our presentation first, just kind of run through with a quick explanation of what we were doing and kind of lead into everybody else. But yeah, so our whole project was based around, two large clusters in the Southeast region, the oceans and the visitor products. You guys might ask, those are already super well established. Why are you concentrating more resources on that? And we're looking into specifically mariculture and the oceans cluster and regenerative, sustainable tourism within this visitor industry. So our goals were mainly to expand this new mariculture industry that has seen huge growth in the last 5 years, is really when it's been starting and getting off the ground, and it's just a really exciting area. It's still growing and getting small and needs a lot more resources behind it, and we thought that this would be a great opportunity to help that get off the ground. As far as the visitor industry goes, the title of this grant opportunity is Build Back Better, and the last year, 2 years has been a rough time for the visitor industry, any way you cut it. And we see this as an opportunity to look at the visitor industry right now and see if there's areas that we can improve it to make it more sustainable, whether it's, looking at different customer crowds, putting a greater emphasis on individual visitors, independent visitors, small cruise tourism, looking at adventure tourism and cultural tourism to tap into this concept of regenerative tourism, and all kind of, build those back as the rest of the tourism industry is kind of recovering from the last couple of years. To do that, we are looking into opportunities to really stimulate entrepreneurship around those areas, working to put together community innovation events, and investment opportunities to provide resources to new entrepreneurs, as well as working with groups to make human capital. And everyone has had issues finding employees lately, and we're looking to how can we find the people, especially locally, to train them, provide them the skills so they can be the ones to take and benefit from these jobs that would be created through this program. And like I mentioned, we're really concentrated on Southeast Alaska as our region to make this all happen. You can see our coalition members over there include University, Clinton and Haida, a couple small towns, governments to try and get some resources into there, and then working with Eagle Crest as an awesome partner for outdoor and rec, and as well as a couple of resources here in Juneau. So I think I'm going to move on to the next one. We've got Cold Climate Housing Research Center.
Wonderful. I will be presenting on that. My name is Jessica McKay, and I am a project manager with the Cold Climate Housing Research Center. Here with me today is also Tanya. She is our grant writing wizard. So CCHRC is based out of Fairbanks, Alaska, but our geographic concentration was really to try to address statewide challenges with supply chain issues, as well as workforce. So our initiative was, we titled the Sustainable Arctic Manufacturing and Innovation Initiative. The goal here is really to be able to assist startups, particularly in manufacturing and modularized manufacturing, to be able to develop innovative ways to create building materials that can be used locally as well as throughout the state. So within our vision, the first item that we'd like, or the first project that we're really focusing on, is this Advanced Manufacturing Center. The vision for the Advanced Manufacturing Center is really to facilitate a space where people can come in and take a one-off product. For example, we're working with Macro Oceans as within Prince William Sound to kelp byproducts and be able to develop it into a sustainable building material. So from there, this facility would allow for space to be able to develop and improve the manufacturing of those products. So the idea of this is that really being able to reduce the supply chain challenges that we have all been facing, but also to reduce the costs and to utilize local labor and local resources to create a resilient infrastructure for Alaska. So we've all experienced poor building designs within all of the regions of Alaska. And so the idea is, from the Advanced Manufacturing Center, we can then trial these building materials through the Sustainable Village. That is already something that CCHRC has done in the past. And so we have 4 buildings right now that were built in about 12 years ago now that we've been able to kind of monitor. So there are people who live in the Sustainable Village. And the kind of third component that really embraces those two things is this workforce development. So the idea is that we really want to be able to train locals throughout the state, whether that be in local communities or with here in Fairbanks and the Advanced Manufacturing Center, to be able to utilize those products and then again really enable them to innovate from there. One of the examples of our a coalition member that we have is the Kuskokwim Corporation. So right now we are currently working with them to improve their mill operation for 3-sided log cabins that they can build locally. Housing is a major challenge throughout Alaska, and this is something that we are trying to address, but also at large, the building materials. And so really we're hoping through this initiative to be able to kind of model this in an extreme climate and in the most rural area in America, but then be able to ultimately utilize this same model throughout the United States and potentially beyond that as well. You can see I put some of our coalition members and project partners in the bottom area to give you an idea of the far-reaching peoples that we can really work with on this. So our goal is to really be able to find a coalition member within each of the regions of Alaska. So we currently have the 3 projects that we're kind of talking about in the vision, and then a couple projects, but we do have room for other, if we are awarded this, we do have room for other members. So keep that in mind. And if we do end up getting awarded, please feel free to reach out to us and we can kind of talk about the grant and the potential to partner in the grant, but ultimately as well, further into the future, we really want to be able to keep this open to everyone. So the last item I'm going to talk about is the project cluster network map that you see on the side. That kind of gives you an idea. What we did is we took all of the different partners and coalition members that we had and kind of that we thought were really at the center of what we were trying to achieve here. And that's ultimately the development of the workforce, the development of manufacturing locally, and the research of building materials. Combine that with the modern technology and innovation, as well as the traditional knowledge of the peoples who live here. And it really is the intent to provide diversity, equity, and inclusion within the workforce, as well as the startup of businesses within Alaska. So I will let Tanya speak to anything that I may have missed, and then we're available for questions if you have them.
Thanks, Jessica. I feel you were fairly comprehensive. The only thing I would add, and my involvement was also to represent work with the universities, OIPC, and the Center ICE program, which anybody who's involved in Startup Week, you know what those are. And a key part is working with Mark and the rest of that office so that if this project comes into fruition, that things that happen at the Advanced Manufacturing Center, things that are deployed through the Sustainable Village, people who are involved in the workforce, that they can have access to the resources and the skill sets and everything with OIPC and Center ICE to try and spin off businesses and get people trained into the ways so that then they can go and start up their own shingle and get things going forward. So we were really excited for how that fit together with the interests of CCHRC and Center ICE and this program. So it should be a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. So let's magically move to the next one. And just to keep things moving, when we're done with this, move to the next one, and we'll ask our presenter to go ahead and introduce themselves and take it from there.
I don't know if we have somebody with the Hope Project here or not.
That could explain it.
Going
Yeah,
well.
Mr. Woodenberg from Cooperative Association. Can you guys see me?
Yeah, we can. Thanks so much for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you guys. So, I want to thank, Kai and Brian for hosting this. It's really, you guys summed it up in your intro. It's a great opportunity for us to work together. There's so much overlap and in either parts of projects or all of them. I can see a couple of them even. I hope this ends up in some of the people who don't get awarded partnering up and continuing on. So it's a really great service you're doing for us. I think a lot of the folks from out of state are with our Hope Super Campus, and I wanted to take a second to thank them for taking the time to join us as well. They're with a company called Eminent, and they're helping us with the data center part of the operation. I also see Tiffany Mills from Hope is on here, and Tiffany, feel free to jump in and add anything. I was going to take a moment to explain the Hope organization as well as Sean Seat, which are two other partners, and touch on ourselves in City of Cloak, which make the four. We're one of the smaller clusters, but we will serve the whole state. And I would hope that this is the beginning of a new thing for the state of Alaska. This data center, it's really, I believe, the future, and can solve a lot of problems for us, and replace a lot of things that are hurting our state, I think. So anyway, I wanted to start. I'll start by Hope is an organization on our island. One of my favorite. I'm just going to read from their website. Their mission to construct a safe island environment that provides support and advocacy for victims and survivors of interpersonal violence through collaboration and prevention efforts with others. So that's sort of the core center of what we're trying to do here. And we're going to have Hope's temporary housing and also long-term housing. I also envision housing, a mixed income housing that's for sale, that will help offset it. So you have low income with high income housing that we sell for a high price to help offset the cost of building. And it's something that I've been a part of in other cities that's really successful, because it creates a really neat interaction with folks that normally don't, might be in different neighborhoods. So that's sort of Hope's 2 cents from their website. That we offer supportive services for those experiencing violences. We have trained advocates to assist with resources for those in dangerous situations. We provide education for the community. Most importantly, we offer hope. So I mean, it's just that's why we chose to name it that. And I've had friends who have benefited from their work and their services, and it's really an important thing, a neat thing that we have on the island. So glad. I want to help them however I can. Sean Seat is a native corporation based out of Craig, Alaska, which is just about 5 miles away from us. And that's a hard thing to explain, but I'm not going to try and explain. I'm just going to read the same thing from their vision. We're the past, present, and future shareholders. Sean Seat will be a driver in the community in the economy, growth, and future of our community, state, nation, and nation through our own investing and effective partnerships. We are the steward of the islands and waters of our ancestors. If I could have read that correctly, but it sums it up. Sorry for stumbling. I'm so nervous, you guys. Sean Seat's mission. Sean Seat Incorporated strives to develop economic opportunity that improves the quality of life of our people while perpetuating our culture, which builds trust through integrity and accountability. Core values: trust, teamwork, making a difference, integrity, a strong foundation, and accountability. I didn't have to prepare for this. I just their vision and mission really sums up what we're trying to do here. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to wrap it up. But the Cooperative Association, we're a federally recognized tribal government. And the way it works in Alaska, most of you guys know how we'll have, instead of a reservation, we have a tribal government. And here we also have a city, the city of Kawak. And we sort of work together. In this one, we're really working together. We both applied for this. So the city of Kawak, the way we do it is we build, and then we usually hand over the product to the city to manage. So the economic driver of this is the data center. And I'm not going to try and explain, what a data center is, other than it's financially foolish not to do. And if we don't make one here, whether it's part of this or something else, we're really missing the boat. This is from the Chamber of Commerce. Our report reveals during the construction, the average data center employs 1,600 workers, $77 million in wages. Additionally, it generates $243 million in output through local economy supply chain, $9.9 million in revenue for state and local governments. For every year that follows, the same data center goes on to support 157 local high-paying jobs, 7.8 million in wages, injects 32.5 million into the local economy, and generates 1.1 million in revenue to the state and local governments. And so, we're losing our logging here, and fishing's slowing down, and we'd like to help sort of find a solution for oil. And I think that the data centers are that. So I'll leave it on that. Sorry for taking so much time, you guys, and thanks again for putting this on, Kai. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Damon. That was a great presentation. I appreciated learning more about it.
Very good. Matt Suber, who we have here?
This is Brittany Smart with the Fairbanks North Star Borough. So we put together the Alaska Railboat Clean Energy Transportation Infrastructure Growth Center cluster is actually the name. So what our intent is on this one is to expand the interior gas utility Titan plant in Port McKenzie for liquefaction capacity. We want to have segments 3, 4, and 5 of the Port McKenzie rail extension completed. That will not bring it all the way to the Port McKenzie port, to the port itself. However, it will make substantial progress, and the extensions of segments 3, 4, and 5 will get it to IGU's Titan plant. And then we're asking for 3 rail connections, 3 rail spurs, one to the IGU's facility at the Titan plant in Matsu, another one to their Pegger Road facility up here in Fairbanks, and a third one out in North Pole. What the completion of this project would increase the liquefaction capacity of natural gas in state, and then move the natural gas, instead of by truck, by rail. It will also help Matsu make significant progress on the rail extension, which once it gets fully extended to the port, has significant potential impacts in terms of redundancy and cost and options of moving goods to the state and throughout the state. So that in a nutshell is what we're looking for. Increased natural gas distribution in the interior has been a priority for a very long time. The cost of energy is one of our biggest barriers to businesses, residents, everyone really. We also have an air quality issue. So with this, we can help improve our air quality and help reduce energy costs in the interior while moving forward in having additional transportation options for goods. That in a nutshell is what we're going for. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. All right, so that's next. Spruce Root.
And I don't believe anyone from Spruce Root is here. If there's somebody here, you want to speak up if you'd like to summarize your project. No, that makes sense. I know I appreciated the work Elena was able to finally pull together some stuff, but I know was going to be tied up, but offered to make this available to us so we could see what's going on here. So it might just take a second on this, but one last call. Anybody Spruce Root that wants to speak up before I talk over you? Cool. Spruce Roots put together this forest products cluster proposal that you see here. Really, truly an amazing list of partners. When we pulled together the information, all I had to do at that last bullet point, but there's a list of partners that probably is another 15 or 20 entities long that have been attracted to this. The role of the forest products industry has been deep and long in Southeast Alaska, and there's continued to be interest in trying to transition into sustainable forest product and second growth type of opportunities to develop the incubator opportunity for new products, value-added products, as well as recognizing the differentiated properties of some of the products that come out of the Southeast forests. And this group is seeking to try and build upon that legacy of expertise and the availability of the wood products to be able to create a value-added industry in there. So I look forward to this project continuing on in some form, regardless, because of the capability and the diverse placement of this industry throughout Southeast Alaska. Now, Brian, you've worked with this far more. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about this proposal or what you've may have learned about what they're doing.
You did a great job, Kai. You're for not being a regular of Southeast. I'm very impressed with your. That's great, and obviously the forest products industry is super challenged in our region, and it's great to see that they're looking for ways to keep it part of our economy. We are in the largest national forest in America.
Super, good, thanks. Okay, Soren.
Let's do it. Southeast Conference. Do we have someone from Southeast Conference? I think I saw that Robert is on an airplane.
Yeah, he's traveling this morning, and I know Julie had acknowledged this was happening, but was also unavailable. So I don't think anybody else showed up, but I'll give it a second to see if there's anybody that wants to pop up here and step into talking about the Southeast Conference proposal. No.
I can say a few words about this one, Kai. Yeah. So, and this is a proposal that is near and dear to our hearts and all of Southeast is mariculture growth. What we see is an industry that is a few $1 million currently, and there's a vision to make the mariculture industry a $100 million industry. And they're building off of some great momentum. We have lots of advocates around coastal Alaska have been noticing the opportunity and interest in mariculture, great products, products that have other uses as well, other than food products. And then there's also some cases for some environmental services that can come from mariculture as well. The state, under the previous administration, created a task force, and that task force, a statewide task force, identified and made a blueprint for advancing forward mariculture as an initiative, and the Dunleavy administration adopted that, and now there's a group that's working on it. Southeast Conference, what's interesting about them is about this proposal, where we focused on our proposal, mariculture within our region, they're looking at a pan-coastal Alaska initiative, which is bringing everyone, uniting everyone that's interested in mariculture throughout not just Southeast Alaska, but most of coastal Alaska. I think that's the main. Unless someone would like to add something. Very good, super. All right, Soren, let's see what's next. Pause for the.
Ramona, have you joined us for this meeting? I've got some emails from her. I wasn't sure if she was going to be attending. Anybody else from this group or Ramona? No. Okay. I don't know a lot about this group. You can see the information that's been provided on this. This is a kind of a group, an indigenous group from the remote area out in the Aleutian Islands that is seeking to create a program to help support their peoples, particularly that have been spread out through the different activities that have happened on the islands, and trying to create some healing and some opportunity to reestablish their culture and their peoples. And Brian, or if there's anybody that knows anything more about this group, that's about as far as I can go with the discussions I've had with her.
Thank you. That was an excellent summary. Thanks, Kai. Okay, so what's next? I know we have some folks from this project.
Hi, Brian. It was
Hi.
great to see you yesterday. Thanks for coming to a couple of our aerospace focuses. So at the University of Alaska Center for Economic Development, we led a team. Our broad title was the Alaska Aerospace Innovation Corridor. And our goal is truly to grow Alaska's aerospace cluster. We talk about making all of Alaska become a research, development, and deployment laboratory for aerospace. We attended the Accelerate Alaska conference yesterday with a focus on aerospace, and had a lot of energy and great conversations coming out of some of the presentations we gave. And one person noted that they're currently working with the FAA to have them consider Alaska being, they call it a mini national airspace. And so that basically means Alaska could potentially become a test bed for how to totally integrate our airspace, whether we're talking about drones, rocket launches, traditional aircraft, electrified aircraft, et cetera. And so that could be something that's really interesting. That's just one concept that we are trying to capture when we talk about the Aerospace Innovation Cluster. We had a number of components in our proposal. There were a few infrastructure pieces. We had a very large workforce development initiative. We want to reach people young, early in their education, so that they can begin to develop an interest in aerospace, whatever facet of aerospace they might end up in, and then work with them throughout their educational journey to sort of hopefully end up in the aerospace industry. Again, yesterday at Accelerate Alaska, we had a lot of, well, not a lot, we had two professors, one UAA's who leads UAA's aviation division, and then Denise Thorson, who leads UAF space grant programming, and connected them with industry members to talk about how we could better increase collaborations between the two. And I just have to say the possibilities are so strong. The opportunity to bring people together around this industry is incredibly exciting to me. And so our real hope is that if we're successful with Build Back Better, phase one, we'll be able to use some of that funding to kind of increase collaborations like this, increase the connections, get an already strong industry, whether they know it or not. One of the interesting things about the aerospace industry is all of the pieces are there. We have what Brian mentioned when he was describing clusters. We have a lot of firms in all aspects of the industry. Actually, we have startups. We have people who have, they were startups years and years and years ago, and they're now thriving businesses. We have some larger, more traditional companies. So we have the industry piece. We also have a really strong research focus happening up at UAF as it relates to space. Also as it relates to unmanned aircraft at a quasi at UAF. And then of course our strong aviation program in Anchorage. And so we have the educational component. So we have research, education, and industry, and we even have public sector involvement through the state of Alaska's Alaska Aerospace Corporation. And so all the pieces are there. They just need a little bit more coordination. And quite honestly, an infusion of funding would go a really long way. So our hope is that we can do that kind of work. And like I said, invest in the workforce, develop a few of the infrastructure pieces, do some research around advanced manufacturing and air cargo. That's another opportunity. And yeah, really go from there. It's hard not to do aerospace puns, but it could really take off with a little extra investment. I'll end with that. I welcome questions. I welcome critical thinking. And thank you so much, Brian and Kai, for making this happen. It's a real gift to be able to hear what other people are up to and kind of appreciate each other's energy. So thank you.
Very good. That presentation really lifted my spirits. I don't know. It's my lame attempt at humor there. I love your jokes, Margo.
Very, very, very punny.
Okay, here we go. Next.
Robert, are you back? I know Robert stepped away for a moment. I don't know if he got back.
I am here, and thank you
Great.
guys so much for putting all this stuff together. I do have a 5-minute timer, so I'll do my best to keep within that. So thank you everybody for being here today and for all of your wonderful work and hard ideas. This right here is the reason I think that the Build Back Better proposal opportunity is so powerful, because it does allow us to do the one thing that we need to do, and that's learn to work together. You know, we all have different approaches, we all have different agendas, but at the end of the day, we all live in a very small community in a very big state. And we've had some really great conversations outside the forum, some connections we've met here, and I really just appreciate everybody putting this together. So my name is Robert Shields. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Reason and Knowledge, 501c3 based here in Fairbanks, Alaska. And essentially the slides you're looking at represent a proposal that we have called Alaska Leaping Forward, where we're looking at proposing a foundational upgrade to our systems, our economic systems, our environmental systems, our social systems, starting with the development of a upgraded next version grid. And that basically focuses on decentralized renewables clustered together using hydrogen, geothermal, but using hydrogen as the medium for exchange between all systems. And so the first project, which is listed, is really the Interior Grid Resiliency Project. And there are a number of people and organizations that are involved in this project, namely Ballard Power Systems and Hydrostar USA. And we've had some really great conversations with Solar on Earth. One of our key partners, Community Collective Sun, actually provides financing for solar for nonprofits, and they provide options for solar or for storage as well. So, you know, right now they've got a program going on that parallels this, Solar for All, where communities, schools, churches, all nonprofits could really make heavy investments at no cost into solar. And this drives and shapes the information, because solar in Alaska is not a game changer. It's just a way to shape the pie. And everybody can use the, you know, the analogy of people would love to be able to power their snow machines with hydrogen. So essentially, the idea is we want to look at how we can upgrade our grid at one time, because while it may seem an immense project for us here, we know that there are other companies out there that do this kind of stuff on a regular basis. And we had a really great conversation with one of them, one of our partners, Starwood Energy Group, on Monday about the investment possibilities. And with a little molding, all of these projects could be funded and should be funded. And we'll be reaching out to folks and seeing how we can more appropriately collaborate. But essentially, the key here is to develop local living economies that allow us to develop these resilient infrastructures to supply disruptions, changes in the environment, and changes in the market. And essentially, we support aerospace as well, is because we see it as the most lucrative way to provide a climate endgame. I agree that Alaska has a lot to offer the aerospace industry, and I think the wealth from that industry could really help us divest from the current fossil fuel industry and provide us with the key to what we're really looking at, which is our vision of seeing Alaska thrive as leaders of the fossil-free world. And instead of burning our carbon, we build with it using carbon nanofibers to build structures like the ones you're looking at, the vertical farm, which is a net zero building, which is basically mixed-use community development. So essentially, these projects together provide the opportunity to move, to leap forward and to boldly rise up and address the climate issues. And the investments are out there. There's billions of dollars out there for forward-thinking investments. There's just no money to continue propping up the old systems and expecting that building back to better business as usual is good enough. So the other part of this is the idea that the Army base and Eielson also are looking at power upgrades. And again, scaling this up, we can provide solutions for them all using mixed use development of funds like this, but also reaching out to private equity investors, which we've already had a lot of good conversations with. But everybody can recognize the value of having a military base, which is basically run on hydrogen instead of fossil fuels. So the last project, which is really the critical here thing to the climate action part of this, is the fact that the next phase of transportation can be made out of our waste. And our work with the ET3 and Daryl Oster down in Colorado has been phenomenal, not only in developing a transportation system that could have given the opportunity collaborate with the integration of and the upgrade of the intertie, but also as well provide an economic hub for Fairbanks to become a cultural center for the globe. So these are the projects that we feel that will help best move us forward and create a lower cost of living and a higher quality of life for all. And we look forward to continuing these conversations and working to bring this to advancement and fruition sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Super. Was that right on time too? Probably was. I didn't hear the bell go off. Go ahead, Gregory.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here this morning, and thanks to JEDC and Kai and Brian for coordinating and giving us all this opportunity to talk about our projects. So I am Greg Stewart. I am the grant writer and administrative manager from the Alaska Native Heritage Center. I help prepare projects, prepare applications, and kind of oversee some stuff from time to time when it needs my attention. We developed a project in collaboration with the Alaska Outdoor Alliance, the ATIA, Alaska Travel Industry Association, the Sustainable Southeast Partnership, the University of Alaska, and the Department of Commerce, Community, and Economic Development at the state. Our vision for our proposed project is that it will establish Alaska as the global leader in regenerative tourism by rethinking and rebuilding Alaska's tourism sector in a way that builds long-lasting capacities and strengthens resilience for its stakeholders. Our holistic approach will actively engage and benefit the community members who live amongst tourism destinations, as well as the land, water, and wildlife that exist in visitor spaces. The current tourism economy will transform to be more equitable by providing visitors with a more authentic experience, both culturally and environmentally, and by revitalizing local economies, preserving and strengthening indigenous cultures, and offering memorable, educational, and transformative experiences to the guests. In addition to our coalition members, we had about 34 supporters, which included the governor's office, state agencies, legislators, nonprofits, Native Corps, retail corporations, museums, and a number of other things on that list. We pitched 4 potential projects in our sort of concept proposal. The top item is our 5-year strategic plan for the tourism industry around the state. So we're going to look statewide at every community and all the ways in which tourism can kind of be executed through those different communities in order to benefit them in a regenerative and holistic manner. We have a cultural tourism vitalization project, which includes construction of a cultural tourism headquarters. It's a sort of enhancement and huge improvement to our Indigenous place names project, which has been underway here for quite some time. We also have some artist residencies and some cultural awareness programs, including a certificate program at Alaska Pacific University. Our next project is the Outdoor Recreation Enhancement Project, which has a whole lot of infrastructure. We're going to build stuff that makes tourism easier for communities, especially in rural Alaska. That's going to focus heavily in the southeast region, the Bristol Bay region around Dillingham and Lake Iliamna, and the Denali region. There's also going to be workforce development baked into the project, as well as an establishment of a feasibility study for national heritage areas, which could bring in a lot of federal money into the state for a number of different things. That the National Heritage Area would be a really big piece on a kind of sustainability component to our project. And the last piece is an Alaska Tourism Equity Accelerator. So basically, we hope to be able to help small businesses in the tourism world in Alaska stand up on their own by providing them with resources and potentially with funding and helping the tourism sector connect better through this accelerator sort of establishment is how I would describe it. Our phase 1 project is going to have obviously the normal grant proposal development. So we're going to do some project development. We're also going to create some RFPs that'll come out that'll kind of get contractors to be interested in our project. We're going to do a gap analysis with the University of Alaska around workforce development and labor, as well as doing a lot of stakeholder engagement. So making sure that people on the ground in communities feel heard or part of the process and that their feedback is incorporated overall into the strategic plan, as well as all these other projects that we've proposed. So Thanks again, everyone. If there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. This is sort of some bullet points about our vision. But yeah, it was really good to work with all these different partners and get sort of buy-in from lots of different people. And we're very hopeful for our proposal. So thanks again.
Thank you. Three other projects that we, Kaya, before I say what I think, we have not heard specifically back from these three. Is that this is all the information we have at this point?
There we
Are
go.
muted.
Yeah, there we go. Now it's a Zoom meeting. Yeah, unless there's somebody here who's joined with these projects, we might just give it a second to see if there's anybody that has popped on that came to the meeting that we didn't get information, or perhaps I overlooked something that was sent. But anybody from these three projects that would like to speak to them? Going once, going twice. Okay, so yeah, I don't know anything more about these projects at this point. Brian, if there's anything you want to offer, or anybody else that wants to chime in here a second, I think these represent some potentially interesting and valuable projects. They're more regional focused in some different areas, it appears, from the titles and the lead agency. But I hope we'll learn more about this down the road. I particularly see some areas like that construction of multifunction buildings is one that I hope at some point will overlap with the CCHRC in terms of maybe their work. It seems like a natural collaborative opportunity with what they're doing there. And these two other tribal entity ones, I think, is another great opportunity with Kwelak and the Hope Center to share some of the knowledge and thinking that's going on in these areas that are trying to look at small regional and tribal based economic development opportunities. So I hope there's more that can happen with these projects. So Brian, unless there's anything you've got at the moment, I'm going to transition us into our first small group discussion. Okay. So what we're going to do next is, we've been at this for a while. I want to invite you at this point to stretch and move around figuratively and potentially virtually or in reality here. What we're going to do is move into the first of two breakout discussions to give you a chance to talk and share some interest in these areas. I also know that some of you have busy schedules. If you decide that you've gotten the overview of the projects and you've gotten what you can put in for time, I'm so grateful that you were able to join us for this, but I hope you will stay for the discussions, because I hope you can stay for some of the deeper dive on this. There's two discussion sessions we're going to have. The first one is really focused in on the projects, an opportunity for some clarifying questions and discussion about those projects, but also talking about what are some of the opportunities that may be there to help with phase one award recipients and their hard work that they're going to do to have to be able to create their phase two proposal. Are there new connections and new opportunities that might exist here? One of the hopes with this meeting is that we might discover one or two new connections that weren't there before during the rush to get these original proposals together. And some folks will say, hey, there's something going on here that we ought to connect with, so that if you get phase one, we can help, or even if you don't get phase one or phase two, that we can still move ahead with these connections. So this is opportunity for some clarification, some connections, as well as talking about if there's some barriers that we can help overcome there. The way this is going to work, I'm going to open up 3 breakout rooms. I've kind of taken the best shot I can at trying to break these up. Breakout room 1 is going to be focused in on kind of people and place. And let me drop this in here. That's why I was going to have my hands full. So that's breakout room 1, and Daniel and Brian from JEDC are going to be there. They've got a couple of prompting questions. We'll invite you to do introductions, ask clarifying questions, and then dive into some discussion about those sector clusters and some of the opportunities there. Breakout room 2 is going to be focused more on technology, the housing work of CCHRC, energy, aerospace type activities. And then breakout room 3 is going to be focused in on the ocean, mariculture, and forestry areas that are there, with Soren in that room. So I'm going to open up the rooms. You're going to be able to move to whichever room you want to. You're going to be able to also leave that room if you would like and go back into the main area, and then from there go into a different breakout room if you'd like to visit a couple different ones. Each of us in the rooms, Brian and Daniel, myself and Soren, we're going to try and keep a few notes in there about some of the discussion points. And one of the things we'll be asking is at the end of the breakout session, and I'm going to set it for about 12 minutes and see how the energy is going, is I'll be asking the person taking notes to try and pick out one or two things with your help of something you'd like to share with the full group again about the discussion that you've had that you'd like to share. So as you wrap up your sessions, you're going to see a notice coming through, and it's going to give you about a minute or so to wrap up, and you'll need to try and take a second to figure out what that key point is you'd like to share with the group and who in the group would like to do that sharing of that. There's going to be a Google document now that Christy's going to drop in the chat, and the facilitators for the meeting already, or for the sessions already have that. This is available for all of you to look at, and interestingly enough, I hope, this is one document for all 3 rooms. So you can also scroll through the document and see what's being talked about in the other rooms, even though you're not there. We're going to send out these notes after the meeting, as well as the slide deck, as well as the notes from the second breakout. So I'm taking a couple extra minutes to go over this so that when we do the second breakout room, it's going to be much quicker. I'm not going to go through all these details. We're going to have the same rooms later, but the second breakout will be focused on startups and innovation. So I've said enough at the moment. Any quick clarifying questions about what we're doing, kind of, you know, order of what's happening? I'm about to open up the breakout rooms. Are we okay? Cool. Okay, so here we go. You're going to be making the call on moving yourself to the rooms that you want to go to. So they should be open now, and you should be able to move to your rooms. And I'm going to hang out for half a second to make sure everything's working correctly. And then Christy, if you could, at about the, let's see, let's plan right now. I'm looking at the clock. Let's plan on 12 minutes. At 12 minutes, could you broadcast a message to all the rooms, letting them know we're getting ready to wrap up?
Sure.
I'm not seeing how to get into the room there.
Scroll all the way to the bottom of that list that should be on your screen, and then you have an option to join one of the rooms. You could send somebody to another room, but you don't want to do that. You just want to go down and join your room. That's what the top thing is. Some of us can send people to places.
I don't have a I don't have that option.
Yeah, I don't
either.
see it either.
Well, those of you, if hopefully some have that option. So do you see breakout rooms in progress? A white screen that could have popped up, should have popped up now. Oh man, because that's how you get in your room.
No.
Is it showing up if you click on the 3 dots in the bottom of your window? Are you seeing an option there for breakout rooms?
I'm not seeing that option there, Brian and Kai, and I can't see breakout rooms either.
So the bottom of your control panel, if you made your screen big, at least on my screen, I have an option that says breakout rooms. Right at the bottom where you have options for participants and sliding across the bottom.
No, I have participants, polls, chat, share screen, record, live transcript, and reactions. That's it.
Yeah, you guys have got a different situation than what we're looking at.
Okay, let me close the rooms for a second and look at the, oh, it's taking a second to close. I'll try and relaunch them, and hang on, it's shutting down. I'm trying to think of what has happened.
Yeah, the only common ground I saw was that all the co-hosts could move.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw that.
That's okay, so I can, let's see, allow. Oh, I see what happened. Somehow. Okay, so let me try again and see if now you have the ability to see the rooms and join them. Oh, I'm seeing people moving around. Okay, looks like there was a checkbox parameter that I'm pretty darn sure I had set right to begin with, but it was unchecked, and my bad, I guess. But now folks are moving in there. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to room 2. Christy, if you'll give us about 12 minutes or so.
I'm just kind of hanging back. People move in. So if you have a question, Christy or I or Kai will try to help you get there. Nolan's name has been changed to Margot, which I think fine.
Hey, folks.
Okay.
So I'm just going to drop the Google Doc in this chat also, so you've got it handy in case you want it. See if I can figure out how to. I'm flustered over having the breakout room thing not working, so now I'm trying to get back in my groove. So there's the Google document. So this is room 2. Yeah, and so what I grouped together here were the projects that related kind of to technology and energy. So this would be the Matsu rail energy project. It would be the work that Robert was doing for the Alliance for Reason and Knowledge. It's the aerospace project. It's the Cold Climate Housing Research Center project to kind of think with that technology lens. I mean, there's so many of these projects that overlap a little bit, but I'm just curious now to find out if there are some clarifying questions or areas of interest that anyone has here. What I was suggesting as kind of a starting point is, first off, if there's any clarifying questions, but also if there's anything that you thought was particularly impactful or interesting in terms of potential projects in these areas that you want to lift up. Any thoughts or questions?
I guess to just break the ice, for our project, we really found this as a great opportunity for us to start networking. So we have the Fairbanks North Star Borough, Matsu Borough, IGU, and Alaska Railroad. And we saw this as an opportunity to take our various project aspects and put it into one portfolio to talk about how it really supports the entire rail belt region and the state as well. So we are fully committed to taking this beyond Build Back Better. Whether we win or not, we know the chances of getting funding for that. But what it did do is it really provided us that oomph that we needed to really make sure that we were talking and collaborating and working together. So our intent is we're going to keep moving forward regardless and look at other funding opportunities.
I think that's fantastic. That's, to me, that was what was so impressive about this, is it was one of the rare times I saw that it really kind of incentivizes everyone to get out of the silos, and this portfolio project approach, as opposed to just kind of doing a one and done on one project. I was really excited about getting people to think, where they wanted 3 to 8 projects. And other thoughts about where you're going with the projects and how you viewed this? Yeah, go for it. Go, Roger, or Robert, excuse me.
Yeah, this is really great because of the fact that the largest problem is that we all, our best intentions, we get into our silos, we get into our thinking, and it's that cross collaboration. And one of the things I recently did, which to help with this, was I think I'm still the first eco districts accredited professional in the entire state of Alaska, and it's basically community development focus, but also a business focus. A focus on business planning, replication. We've hosted a solar tour up here for the last 10 years, and my favorite has always been 6 Robley's, largely because it was a corporate decision. There wasn't no emotions or, wanted to save the environment or anything like that. That happened, but it wasn't the motivation, and business allows for replication. I think that's the biggest part. And, whoever gets funding, the projects that we're talking about are larger than the money they're offering, even the $100 million. So this is a real good opportunity for us to create those collaborations, not only with each other, but also with private equity investors who want to see Alaska thrive. And as I mentioned before, are very much interested in helping us move forward and seeing our next version. And the connection between aerospace and the data center really really is intriguing to me because of the fact of how they connect at the community level. You know, a lot of the data that we collect for aerospace is about colonization, how we live on other places. But most of aerospace, when you think about it, talk about rockets and getting to the moon, but how do you live there? And I think this is an advantage that Alaska has, and I think this is for this group a beautiful opportunity for collaboration, because these terrestrial colonies, these communities, provide a lot of data on how people interact, how we work together, how we overcome the challenges of personality differences in politics and corruption, and how we deal and how we create a system that can identify those things early on and weed them out. So I'm just really excited to be here and to collaborate. I look forward to connecting with as many people as interested in moving Alaska forward to be the next version of our best selves. Thank you.
Yeah, Robert, I'll follow on to that just because you identified a couple things that when we were working on our application, you're totally right. Alaska is a great place to test out some of those technologies. And we, I know we have a couple folks from Cold Climate Housing in the group, I think, and actually had conversations with Mindy over at Cold Climate Housing when we were working on our application to figure out, does it make sense for us to collaborate together on aerospace and include some of this manufacturing and testing for future colonization, or does it make sense for them to go like focus on their own proposal? And in the end, they did their own proposal, which is wonderful. It sounds so cool. But if aerospace is funded, there's potential to bring some of that cold climate housing focus back in to our work. I'm not sure if the reverse makes quite so much sense. If cold climate housing is funded, hopefully we both will be, but who knows? And then also on our team, we have a woman who owns a nonprofit or runs a nonprofit called the Space Farming Institute. And her work really looks at how to bring grow and develop fresh produce in space. And then if and when we're actually colonizing planets. So very interesting to think about. It kind of broke my brain a little bit to think about that kind of stuff. But fascinating to really look at how Alaska could be a test bed for some of that very early thinking around that kind of thing. So kind of fun. And then I referenced the Accelerate Alaska conference that we attended yesterday. And I would say it was the first time we had, and it wasn't comprehensive at all, but we brought together representatives from different parts of the industry. And it was just so heartening and inspiring to see them exchanging contact information and sharing ideas and signing up for each other's boards and like organizing tours. And it just kind of reminded me of the power of connection and how these things, when it seems like it's just happening easily, when it's easy, it seems like you're onto something. And so far, bringing the aerospace industry has been really easy. So hopefully we'll move forward, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm not sure if that quite answered what you're looking for, Kai, but those are my thoughts.
No, it's a good perspective. I appreciate particularly you're recognizing and lifting up this idea of how some of the things like the CCHRC cold climate work actually overlaps into the aerospace work, and for us to see this greater vision of what we could create through some of these projects and the opportunities that are there. Certainly exciting. I'm curious, I know we won't have a lot of time. I'm wondering what barriers are there going to be to preparing a phase 2 proposal for those that might get it in this space, and how can the community potentially help in that work? I mean, that phase 2 proposal, for those that aren't completely familiar, is something that's going to have to be done between basically early December and mid-March. There's basically a 3-month sprint to develop detailed proposals for what could be $25 to $75 million worth of projects. And it's just, to me, it's a dauntingly short timeline. And I'm just wondering if any of you have thoughts on how this group or coalitions of folks, when we won't get a lot of phase 2 opportunities to apply. Hopefully we get 1 or 2 in Alaska. But I just wonder, how do we get kind of all hands on deck to make sure whoever gets that phase 1 award is successful in what they do? Because at the end of the day, I appreciate that everybody's been on one page, that we want somebody to be successful getting that phase 2 award. Thoughts on barriers or how we could support whoever gets those phase 1 awards?
Yeah, I can start. And just for clarification, EDA did say that those phase 1 awards could be used for 18 to 24 months out. However, they expect that technical assistance to help frame a phase 2 proposal, which is due in March. So while you may not be able to complete all of your environmental studies, you would really want to prioritize the tasks to, say, firm up your budgets or something along those lines to really make sure that you have all the components you need for a phase 2. For our project, we're actually feeling really confident. If we're awarded a phase 1, we have already had so much environmental and technical work done on our projects that we're feeling pretty good about that aspect. Our challenge straight up is access to capital. Because our total budget is 203.9 million, whereas the max that you're allowed is 100 million. We do have some funding options through bonding through IGU to fund the difference. Alaska Railroad has already funded 184 million for the PMRE, but more funding would be needed, plus to meet our match. So we do have opportunities to meet the match. But we definitely need to strategize to move forward. We think this project in particular has statewide impacts in terms of energy redundancy and transportation options. And so we are working on putting a CAPSIS request into the governor for the capital budget and working through the railroad to work with them with their funding. So working with other communities and getting the support to have that move forward, as well as identifying other grant funding sources. The railroad in particular, if we can expand where they're traveling, finding other potential anchor customers to help cover the cost of ongoing maintenance. You know, that's one of the concerns of the railroad. They don't want to build lines if they can't justify it for the partner. So that's really where our focus and interest is, and it is really focused on the access to the capital there.
Good, thanks. Other thoughts on supporting folks that might go into the phase 1 process?
Kai, I can add something really quickly. I think we have the 1 minute remaining. Yesterday, I was also at the Accelerate conference, and something that came up a few times was people are so excited. I love when Brittany said, you know, this kind of gave us a reason to come together in maybe new ways. Part of that is you're trying to build trust relatively quickly with, even if you've worked with other partners before. When you're looking at a proposal that could be tens of millions of dollars, you're trying to build trust with your cohort very, very quickly. So that, I think, could be a big challenge. There's lots of great tools and resources and frameworks out there that can help with that. But that's one thing that I heard a panelist say, like, this is amazing. I want to work with all of you, but I don't totally know all of you yet, even if I know you professionally. So how do we get to know each other quickly so we can work in the most efficient and effective way possible on these really large scale proposals? So that's one of the things, building trust in a pretty quick amount of time, I think could be a great opportunity, but also potentially a challenge.
Good. I think that's a good closing comment on the challenge we have here. I know we should be getting Inc. back into the main room. Thank you all for joining in this discussion. I've got some notes on this. If there's anyone that wants to pop up when we get back in the main room, we'll take a second to debrief on this, but here we go. Oh, we've still got 57 seconds. The main point that I think I wanted to bring up in the summary is potentially this overlapping issue, like the cold climate and the food systems and the housing, but also I think, you know, to that the later point that Margot made about how challenging it'll be to be able to build trust quickly, I think are both key points in those challenges. Anybody that would like to speak to those two when we do the summaries? Margot, would you like to do that?
I could say some. I just wanted to you know, sorry I didn't speak. I didn't realize we ran out of time, but just say thanks to all you guys, and you know, there is so much overlap. We won't have the time to do it, but before the second application is due. But I look forward to, and I welcome any ideas from you guys about how we can all stay in touch. I guess this.
Great. Thanks for everybody making it through that process. And Damon, I'm sorry about getting cut off at the last minute. It's one of the unfortunate realities of Zoom breakout rooms is that it doesn't have a very graceful sudden end to it other than the little countdown timer. Once you hit 0, you are done. So thanks everybody for that discussion that's in there. I'd like to just quickly ask each of the folks from the 3 different breakout groups, if there's any particular point you'd like to lift up in terms of your discussion about these projects. The first room was looking at tourism, visitor industry, and I'm just wondering, Brian or Daniel, if there's any key points that came out of the discussion in the group that joined you there.
Yeah, Kai, thanks. I think we had a pretty good discussion. It was a small group, but we talked about the opportunity specifically in reference to the Alaska Heritage Center grant application, specifically to talk about the opportunities for a more equitable and inclusive tourism sector throughout Alaska that is sustainable for localities throughout Alaska. And then we had a discussion about the opportunities to merge within that inclusive system, the various visitor pipelines, as one person said, including hunting, recreation, hiking, into a more succinct tourism sector. Brian might be able to say more on the topic.
We probably did what the other groups did, is we spent some time getting to know each other's projects and networking. So that was super productive individually. Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Kai.
Great, thanks. So in room 2, we were looking at some of the technology and energy related projects, and there were 2 things that I think really came up, and invite the group to pop in on if you want to. But the first one was really this opportunity for the overlaps that were in there. Examples of that were looking at like the Cold Climate Housing Research Center, but what's going on in that cold climate work actually overlaps into the aerospace industry, potentially in terms of cold climate housing in space, or how to think about resilient isolated food systems that might be needed in space as well as in a remote village. So that idea about overlap, the same thing with the Matsu, the rail belt extension project, and some of the complementary overlapping areas in tourism and the infrastructure that would affect the state. So these overlapping issues and the opportunity to leverage that came out. The other thing that Margot really spoke to was that in moving into potentially those groups that get the phase 1 award, we're going to have a tremendous challenge and opportunity, but challenge in having to build a lot of trust really quickly in order for those groups to be successful with that work. And I think it's going to be a lift that we're going to have to figure out, how do we support those few folks that will get that award to be successful? Because at the end of the day, we want somebody to get a phase 2 award, but it's going to be a big lift. Margot, or anybody want to add anything to what I've mentioned?
The one thing that I wanted to reiterate that Brian even brought up, the networking, and I believe Damon spoke to this as well. It's fantastic to get to meet a lot of new people doing amazing work. And so I think that that's already a win for this group, is to getting connected with each other, maybe in new ways. That's part of building trust. So really glad to see this meeting take place and continue to connect with other people doing this work.
Thank you. Good. Then on room 3 that took a look at the ocean, mariculture, and forest, Soren, and I'm sorry, was I cutting off somebody there? There was a little blip for a second, and I'm not sure if I did. No.
I think we're all good.
Okay, super. Soren, if you want to pick it up then with room 3 and your group.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really awesome. We totally kind of made the same mistake of introduce ourselves and then time was about up. But it was really awesome to hear. We're talking a lot about all the different mariculture opportunities, as well as the other sectors in there with oceans and visitor products. And yeah, there's some really amazing technology-based projects, especially through Andre and Ryan, and different ways that we can use, especially seaweed and kelp markets to create new products. We also talked a bit about some of the barriers to the growing these markets as a whole, and found that really marketing is a big need, especially in the mariculture industry, and workforce development, as I'm sure everybody here is familiar with, is one of our #1 priorities in there right now. And we really just need the people with the knowledge and skills to be able to support these industries. and then as well as common issues with supply chain and making sure that the permitting process, especially in the mariculture industry, is as smooth as possible as it grows, and make sure that the government is prepared to support this industry and make it accessible to everyone. Is there anybody within our group that wanted to share a little bit more about anything we talked about? Awesome. I'll throw it back to you, Kai.
Well, thank you. So another virtual physical deep breath break for just a second. What we're going to do next is go back into breakout rooms for Christy, another 12 minutes. I think the timing worked out okay. This one is going to shift a little bit into the theme of this week, the startup and innovation work. And what I'm inviting you to do in this group is to recognize that all this hard work to develop these cluster collaborations and potential projects, I hope is also stimulating ideas on new and present startup opportunities that are out there, opportunities for innovative work that could be done either with existing businesses or creating new businesses, and potentially also surfacing some of the barriers that might exist to entrepreneurship and innovation in those areas. So I'd like to take a few minutes and go back into the groups to talk about startups and how do we create a more vibrant and growing startup ecosystem around these different project areas, and potentially picking up some of these project elements regardless of what happens with the phase 1, phase 2 awards that are in there. So the same 3 rooms, but you don't have to go back to the same room. If you'd like to switch rooms at this point and jump into a different one, I invite you to do that, to maybe learn a little bit more or have some thoughts on that. I will encourage you, if you're kind of new to the group and want to do introductions, but otherwise you may want to just kind of jump in. I know with my group we had 16, so I went pretty straight into the questions. So back into the rooms, your choice on which one you go to, and there'll be some note takers again on that one. Okay, good to see folks again. So this, I'm just watching here, looking for a couple more people that are getting moved over here. Looks like we're there. So this breakout room was a little bit of a leap of faith, quite frankly, to try and go from the EDA grant discussions into a discussion about how does this create opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship, the theme of Startup Week, but not necessarily directly what these project proposals were about, although they all had elements of creating new businesses and fostering innovation, including accelerators and incubator type of potential project proposals in there. And you saw many of the proposals had an innovation incubator type of focus in there. And so wanted to lift up startups and innovation to find out what's going on. So to begin with, I just was wondering if there's any initial thoughts in terms of what kind of entrepreneurship is already taking place in these sectors. This is kind of an easy one because we have so much going on with Launch Alaska and Aquasi and some of the other aerospace type areas. But what other activities in entrepreneurship have you seen in this sector of kind of energy technology that are out there that you think are particularly important, and maybe ones that we need to do more to support in what's happening at this point?
One of the key elements I've heard repeated in all these groups, and I think is critical to what we're trying to accomplish here, is the workforce development element. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of different training, because you hear about pipeline training and stuff, and that's important for that industry, but there's very little training for new industries and in sustainable food systems and sustainable energy systems. You know, these are all still considered novel concepts. And so I know that the Solaris Fairbanks and the Solaris Anchorage folks, one of the biggest challenges they've been having is the simple fact there's not enough people that are trained to do the designs, to do the work. And I know that for a lot of the systems, economic and energy systems in the villages, the same process is true, is that there's no one to maintain those systems after they're installed. They have to bring in people. And then I think that's a huge missed opportunity for people who want to live and work close to their families. So I'd like to see what we can do about fostering a more collaborative environment around helping workforce development. ARC has been focusing on trying to focus on those in transition, meaning coming out of prison or coming out of shelters, focusing on those and vets. But that's a small portion of the population. And then I know that REAP is really working into educating our kids, but how is that connected to transitioning into workforce development? So those are my thoughts. Sure.
Great. Thank you. That's a good point about the workforce element of that. Well, let me suggest a slightly different lens here. What projects, well, let me ask it differently. How would the proposed projects, if funded in phase 1 or phase 2, how will they create more startup and entrepreneurship opportunities? Any of you looking at your project specifically in terms of an entrepreneurial impact or startup community impact?
It seems to me, boy, all of these would create quite a bit of side entrepreneurial opportunities, you know, just to service the production of any of these projects that we've talked about. I'm excited just not only to have your guys' projects funded, but I'm excited for all the folks that will get to work for us when we're building this project. So I mean, it's really doing what it's accomplished. What I was trying to ask before, Kai, was is this, and I guess that's what you're doing, but I think this is so neat that you brought us all together, and I wanted to make sure that we stay together after this, because we should, you know, if we applied as a group, let's put, you know, do this. It'll be hard and it'll take some time, but boy, how powerful of a application would that be? Because some of them, they're doing the same thing, so we could maybe just merge them if you're willing, and others are quite different but complement each other. You know, I was going to joke and say, hey, if you give it to us, we'll fund all the rest of them with the data center, you know. But I mean, there's things that you guys are doing amazing things with space and moving stuff around in cold start, and then there's also the funding end of it. So I think as a whole, boy, man, this is pretty neat. So anyway, thanks. That's my 2 cents.
Good comment that you've got on there, but you're really speaking to the real point that I'm trying to you know, tease out, which is how will, you know, any of these projects create new entrepreneurship beyond the specific project that we may be looking at. I think we really need to be looking for those induced opportunities, both in performing the project that might become a startup opportunity for someone to do some of the work of the project, but also what comes after the project being completed. You know, how do we look at creating the entrepreneurial opportunities that are created because of the new capacity that program has created? More thoughts on that?
Yeah, Kai, you and I have talked about this a little bit, but I would love to get to a place where I can bring together industry and the universities and sort of do something you've talked about a lot, the like problem challenge or the hacking for X, and kind of have industry develop projects or challenges that they want to work with students to solve and work on, so that the students are getting that real experiential learning, that startup experience, and they're actually benefiting industry. And so I would love to be able to find some sort of programming like that. And then on the other side, we're really fortunate because Launch Alaska, while aerospace is not one of their areas of focus, they have a number of aerospace companies. And so they're already attracting already formed startups to Alaska to do deployment projects. And so that's another really interesting way to build the industry here, and then to potentially hook students into those companies for internships or projects to kind of have the startup experience that way. And then I think my hope is that if they get a taste of that startup life, it will inspire them to want to do something on their own. So kind of looking at that as a way to support startup activity.
So let me throw one last question out at you, and by all means, as you're maybe processing this, you can circle back to any of these earlier questions if you'd like. But within these sectors, energy, transportation, aerospace we've talked about. What are the barriers that might exist in these sectors towards more entrepreneurship and innovation? They could be policy issues. They could be program gaps or issues. Are there barriers or gaps that we need to address regardless of what happens in phase 1 or phase 2 that might strengthen the startup ecosystem in these areas?
One thing that was identified yesterday at Accelerate Alaska, and I'm going to ping Nolan to jump in too, is the folks at the university who are the ones developing the workforce that will funnel into the aerospace companies. I mean, we all know the university is pretty strapped for funding, and so they're all operating at a pretty bare bones, in a pretty bare bones way. And so if there were increased funding to support more professors, more work, they could better support the students to develop the people who could be launching the companies of tomorrow or working at the companies of tomorrow, or just supporting what we already have. I do really think the university is a key part of that. And I'll point to an example. Ben Kelly is, in my opinion, one of our most exciting entrepreneurs, and that he launched a company, the Launch Company, to do rocket launches. It was recently acquired by Voyager Space, a national company, which is a big deal even outside of Alaska. So it's really exciting. And he's a direct result of having an involved professor who got him excited about the industry and kind of set him on that path. And granted, he had a lot of his own growth and energy and entrepreneurial spirit to get to where he is today, but it might not have happened without his professor like saying, hey, this stuff is cool, you should do this. And so it just really, to me, it's one example, but it truly illustrates the opportunities there. And the professor who was his professor, we had both of them at the conference yesterday, so that was really fun. She shared this map that was so impactful for me. And she said, these are my students. And it was Alaska with all these lines to other parts of the country. And she said, these are all the jobs that they got. And she identified the companies. And she said, one student has come back to Alaska, and it was Ben with the Launch Company. All of her other students have left. And she said, of her students, about 50% want to stay in Alaska, but they need to leave to find jobs outside. And these are really smart, talented people who could support existing companies or potentially go on to launch their own companies. And so it seems like a real missed opportunity. So got a little rambly there. Nolan, please let me know if I miss anything or if there's another nuance, but I think funding for universities is missing, and so is just collaboration and communication. Thanks. Passing it to Nolan.
Yeah, I'd throw in one other thing is the kind of chicken and egg problem that they talked about, where, you know, within aerospace, for example, that when they don't have a whole bunch of employers like in state saying, you know, we need to hire these people with these skills, then it's a little bit harder for them to like justify, you know, spinning up more of a curriculum, right? And then at the same time, like in the private sector, people are like, well, we don't have the skilled people, so we can't grow this sector as well, right? So like you have a little bit of that type of an issue, and I don't always know what the answer to it is, but I think that's something to be worked through. It probably affects a lot of the ideas that you know this group has talked about, you know, in their applications.
Yeah, that's a problem that we have here as well, you know, is you train somebody up and then you lose them to out of the area. So I think a lot of these projects, our project has a IT academy in it. So hopefully we would be teaching people to work for you guys. But I think all of these projects create both sides of it, you know. So yeah, the chicken and the egg, I don't know the solution, but I do sympathize with, we share the same problem, you know.
So I think that's where our project is different, because we are key foundational issues, like the cost of doing business, the cost of energy, the cost of transportation are huge barriers for companies to be able to meet, especially when you want to support local. The cost of supporting local can be really expensive because of the cost of doing business. So I guess that's our approach, and spending, it's a key focus of our new SEDS that we're working on. And I don't think it gets quite as much attention as it should. It's a big issue. I totally agree with everything else that is said, but I think that is something, a broader conversation of the key foundational issues, and make sure that our state is making investments and our local municipalities are making investments to help mitigate those challenges.
Right, thanks. I think we're about to run out of time. I think, a key point that I've picked up from this to share with the group is how important workforce development, workforce training, and education is to this whole entrepreneurial ecosystem in terms of creating opportunities for folks.
Try it again.
There we go. Yep, got it. Welcome back. I hope everyone had a good discussion in that short amount of time. We're going to take just a second to kind of go around the horn again to see if there's any key points from each of the groups that you'd like to share. And then we'll be about ready to wrap up. So let's see, room one. I think it was Daniel and Brian again that was looking at the people, place, tourism type of areas. Any thoughts that came out of your discussion about startups?
Greg's going to lead our feedback.
Yeah, thanks. So basically, we talked about how to balance the positives and negative attributes of bringing tourism into local communities, specifically looking at rural Alaska. And we talked a little bit about how in Southeast, when the cruise ships come, there is a priority for visitors to want to shop local. And this is like an appeal that has been significantly identified. And Brian was highlighting how JEDC has developed a product to help people kind of find local shopping opportunities, and that there's a very similar sort of approach from the cruise industries, but the cruise industries take a larger cut out of the potential profits that might go to the local operators of, retail shops. And so kind of balancing the discourse that one might have with the cruise industry about the economic benefit that they are bringing to the communities with the fact that they are taking some of that economic benefit for themselves, and kind of try to figure out the best ways to do it. And talking with Dave, he highlighted how Eagle Crest can kind of have the capacity to be a higher volume sort of institution for outdoor recreation and winter tourism, but that it's challenging to really get 100% local buy-in to this concept, because tourism can seem to be a little bit of a frightening prospect, as it kind of serves to erode some cultures and erode certain elements of the local lifestyles and local lives of people there. And so really balancing the priority to maintain local authenticity while also developing economically viable avenues that incorporate all the complicated aspects of the cruise ships and tourists and visitors showing up to places that maybe haven't had a lot of visitors in the past. So I highlighted how Nome is an area in the future where cruise ships are probably going to start showing up. And so we are trying to plan for that in the best way possible.
Nice, thanks, Gregory. Anything else from room one? Thank you. Room two was again technology, housing, energy, the rail belt, aerospace one. And the key thing that came up in a lot of different ways about startups and entrepreneurship and innovation was how important the element of workforce and workforce development and university and education programs are to creating the capacity to be able to give Alaskans exposure and training and mentoring to being able to get into those opportunities. There was a great example of the work that Ben Kelly's professor, who I think was from UAF, but I don't recall, but how that professor had tracked where all of their students had gone, and Ben was exceptional in being one of the very few that actually came back to Alaska because there was an opportunity here. But it's a chicken and the egg problem we talked about, both in terms of creating startup opportunities for people to feel like there is a place to go, but also the need to have the people that are inspired and experienced to do that. We also talked a little bit about the challenge of preparing people for the jobs in these new emerging industries. So workforce really popped out to me as an area I wasn't expecting, but I think it was valuable. Anybody else from this group want to raise up a particular point we talked about? Cool, thanks.
I'd like to reiterate a request from whether it's you guys or whoever, but to keep this group together like you've done so far. But after this, and even after the awards are announced, and I'll volunteer to, if you want my help somehow, just to shoot me an email and give me some work to do, however I can help. But I think there's a lot of benefit if we stay together and maybe apply as a group, or just stay in touch and help out however we can. But I don't want it to end here.
That's a wonderful comment. Thank you, Damon. And I hope a good way that as we wrap up here in a few minutes to come back to that point. In room 3 then with Soren on the ocean area.
Yeah, we were able to finish up our conversation about, talking a little bit about, what's really needed to help make these industries thrive. And part of that is, being able to access funds like this can be challenging, especially in communities where things like matching funds aren't available. And had a great idea coming through of, creating kind of a centralized source for identifying matching funds and, accessing those throughout the state. I think that, speaking from personal experience, that is a challenge with all these sorts of projects. And yeah, so that was one awesome thing that I just wanted to share. We're also talking about, what are some really exciting opportunities in these industries. Some are around, the opportunities of repurposing the materials that we use, of fishing bycatch, is one common thing that just we aren't making proper use of, and has a lot of opportunities to develop and find new uses for those products. The intersection of mariculture and tourism and oceans and tourism is, like Brian said at the start of this whole meeting, 2 clusters. There's fantastic opportunities in between those clusters as well as within for new businesses being created. And that is one example that's already happening. And last, we talked a little bit about just how important agriculture is to Alaska. Everyone in the world, I think, had a great saying of, everyone in the world eats and wears clothes, and that comes from agriculture. So, building up that industry here at home is going to be important for ensuring the resilience of Alaska in the future. Is there anybody in that group that wants to share a little bit more, or are we good to move on? Awesome. I'm gonna throw that back to you, Kai.
Good, thank you. So I'm going to launch a poll here. I'm not sure it's the poll I would have launched if I knew how these conversations were going to go, but I was asking the question of, what's the best startup opportunity you've heard today? If you were to pick something and say, there's a startup you want to, see happen or start up, if you can pick something there. I also created an other category, and if you just want to drop your answer into chat, because maybe the category here doesn't match up, but anything that strikes out. As you're doing that, just a couple of housekeeping items on my part before I'm going to turn it over to Brian to close up the meeting here. But I'm going to take the notes that we've got from the 2 breakout rooms. I'll do a little bit of light editing, but I'm going to take those. We're going to take the slide deck that we've gone through today, and also the information out of the chat log, and I'll be sending that out to everybody that registered for the meeting. Part of the reason for doing the registration was so that we'd have a way of keeping track of who was here, so we can follow up on what Damon is talking about. I really respect and appreciate his comments there about the power of this connection and the importance of trying to build on this in the future. So we'll be using that registration information for that purpose, to both share this information with you, that hopefully you can glean some additional value out of it. But also I would offer that any of you that are trying to get help in connecting with somebody else here, because I hope out of all of this, there'll be 1 or 2 connections where somebody said, aha, I needed to meet that person, or I wanted to learn about their project, I want to support them, or there's an opportunity I want to pursue. If 1 or 2 of those come out of there, I'm just going to be so pleased with the effort. But I am grateful for the time that all of you have taken to spend with this. We'll share this information out. I'll look forward afterwards to your feedback, suggestions, and again, if we can do anything to help connect you with other people and opportunities, do reach out. I'd be glad to provide that support. Brian, I'll turn it over to you as I end the poll to wrap us up.
Thank you, Kai. You did a great job of wrapping things up, and I really appreciate. I want to also thank Kai for his work. He last night we were all gathered at the, not all of us, but there was an event in Anchorage, and there was a pitch contest, and there were what 75 of us anyway watching, and it was fun to see that Kai was recognized by the group for just his many years of support for entrepreneurship and economic development in Alaska. That's great, Kai. I'm glad that you can collaborate with us on this work. So yeah, this does wrap it up. I know we're all looking for opportunities to continue to collaborate. I mean, by nature of this group and what we all just went through, it shows that we're all keenly interested in economic development. We host an event. I'm not trying to sell this event, but we host an event for the state in Juneau every year, 11 years running now, Innovation Summit. Put a little information there on that. And that is deliberately created for around clusters is the primary focus of that event. And it's a fun way, and we hope a useful way also to kind of build some skills and learn some get some new concepts, but mostly meet great people around the state interested in innovation and economic development. So there's an opportunity ahead of us right there specifically. And we have Nolan from the Center for Economic Development. Get on his newsletter. He's an excellent source of information about opportunities to connect. Lots of us turn to Nolan for good information on economic development, but also to keep us together. He hosts a bi-monthly, every other month. Is that right now, Nolan?
Monthly, actually.
Monthly, awesome. Well, I don't go to all of them. I should go to more. Sorry, just called me out there, Nolan. Conversation about things that are happening in economic development in the state. So if you want to get on that, I'm sure that Nolan would love to share how to get on there. Go to his site or send him an email. And it's a bit, you can be passive or active. You can get on the agenda if you need to. That's all. Nolan does a great job of keeping us informed. So those are just a couple ideas about how we can continue to collaborate. We're going to invite whoever wins this to the Innovation Summit. We're hoping that there's an Alaskan winner, and we're hoping that they're in a good place to be able to share, use it however they need to the Innovation Summit to help launch their proposal, which will benefit some part of Alaska. And we want to be, we welcome them, invite them to incorporate that into their plans. So we're excited. One communication we're gonna do for sure is whenever we find out who wins, we're gonna do a hoorah and bring everyone together and just for 10 minutes to say, good luck, God bless you, and do your best. So with that, unless there's something else for the good of the order, I want to thank everyone for doing proposal and then for being willing to share with others your great work.
Thanks, Brian. And I forgot to a shout out to Christy and Daniel and Soren and the whole JEDC team that was behind the scenes and actively supporting this meeting. Thank you for your help.
Thank you, Kai. You saved me. Awesome. Everyone have a great day.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'll stay on for a minute if there's anybody that needs me for anything or chit chat, but thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.